News out of Boston on day 3 of deliberations. The jury deciding the fate of Boston bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev has sentenced him to death on some of the 17 counts against him. Tsarnaev is trending right now on Twitter. He was convicted last month for planting bombs with his brother near the finish line of the Boston Marathon back in 2013. The explosion killed 3 people and injured more than 260. Joining me right now is HLN legal analyst Joey Jackson. Joey, thank you so much for joining in. Now, I want to ask you, what were the key factors the jurors were deciding on and considering?
Roxy, good to see you this afternoon. Listen, what happens is that in any trial like this, you have what are called aggravating factors and you have what are called mitigating factors. And what that means is the jury had to weigh the extent to which the crime that he committed was aggravated enough that it would warrant death. Was it heinous? Was it depraved? Was it unusually cruel? Did he kill more than one person in the commission of the crime? Did he detonate a weapon of mass destruction in committing this crime? And so there were a number of factors. There's a 24-page form that they went through that had all of the aggravating factors, and then what happens is those aggravating factors had to be proved by the prosecution during this phase beyond a reasonable doubt. And so certainly the jury felt compelled enough that those aggravating circumstances were met beyond a reasonable doubt. Then they had to, in that form, shift to what are called the mitigating factors, the redeeming factors that might seek to spare his life. And the defense got a number of things in there, including whether he was under the spell, under the control of his brother, had he committed any other crime previous in his life, what were his his growing up and his upbringing and the influences of his family. What did his father have post-traumatic stress disorder, which led for his brother with the radical views to ultimately care for him. And so what they did, Roxy, is go through, that is the jury, all of the mitigators. Now, after they did that, and we have to understand it's not an exact science. It's not as though the jury was in that room checking boxes for aggravating factors, checking boxes for mitigating factors, and then looking again and said, okay, we checked more boxes for aggravating than mitigating, we'll sentence you to death. Even if all the mitigating factors, the lessening factors, the redeeming factors that might spare his life were found by the jury, they could still choose to sentence him to death or otherwise. I think ultimately it relates to what they felt was appropriate. This was a devastating tragedy to this community, a devastating tragedy to the nation. And the fact that they took 14 hours to reach this sentence certainly confirms that they felt compelled enough to reach that sentence, regardless of aggravators, regardless of mitigators, to death. They felt that that was appropriate, that was warranted, and so now he'll be on death row.
And thank you so much, Joey. And once again, for those that are just tuning in, Boston bomber Tsarnaev has been sentenced to death. And I want to know what's next to happen, Joey.
Well, what happens is there'll be a series of appeals for sure, and the appeals will be predicated upon sparing his life. The defense has said for a long time the trial should not have even been in Boston. The fact is that they felt that no matter whether or not Boston as a community was one that wouldn't impose a death penalty, these jurors were death penalty qualified. That means that they could, regardless of what the circumstances and the people feel in Boston, this jury was of the sense that if they felt it was appropriate, they could do it. Now, the defense wanted to move it out. Judge said, we're keeping it right here. Defense wanted more time to prepare. The judge said, we're doing it now. So there'll be a lot of appeals that are pending here, but I just want to remind the audience, Timothy McVeigh, Oklahoma City bombing, he was sentenced 6 years, he died. So it could happen pretty soon, then later.